Good morning, I'm Gretchen Hall, coming to you live on this 12th day of June. It is a holiday, Philippine Independence Day, celebrating our freedom today and bringing you Morning Matters because your morning's matters get to the stories that matter today. Despite the Senate sending back the impeachment complaint against Vice President Sara Duterte, House prosecutors stand firm that it remains constitutional. However, some lawmakers in the House have raised concerns over the legality of the Senate's action.
Inabandonan nila yung konstitusyon, and that is really a clear grave abuse of discretion.
Parang hinaharang po nila ang demokrasya po dito sa ating bansa.
Over at the upper chamber, Senate President Chel Escudero emphasizes that the impeachment trial of Vice President Sara Duterte has not been terminated. As proof, he cites the Senate's issuance of a summons requiring the Vice President to file her response to the articles of impeachment within 10 days. The Education Department is intensifying its anti-bullying initiatives amid reports calling the Philippines the bullying capital of the world. DepEd is also tackling the lack of guidance counselors by training teachers to serve as temporary guidance designates. Welcome to our program, Morning Matters, where we talk about the issues you need to know for the rest of your day. Now, first on the agenda. Senate President Chel Escudero clarifies that Vice President Sara Duterte's impeachment trial is far from over. This comes on the heels of the Senate's controversial move to return the impeachment articles to the lower chamber. Here is the full report.
The return of complaints against Duterte to the lower chamber does not mean the Senate is done with the case. That's according to no less than Senate President Chel Escudero. Escudero said proof of this is their issuance of summons related to the impeachment, particularly the one for the VP, which instructs her to answer to the articles of impeachment within 10 days. She also has to face the Senate tribunal on the date and time set by the presiding officer.
Pakibasa po yung siguro hindi rin panawagan ko dun sa 5 kasamahan naming dakdak pa rin ang dakdak sa dismissal. Nakalagay doon without dismissing, without terminating. So the impeachment court retains its jurisdiction. To my mind, that's why we issued summons. How can we issue summons if we do not have jurisdiction? So walang naaksayang panahon dahil nagawa namin lahat ng tinakdang gawin.
Another order the Senate Impeachment Court issued is for the lower chamber to release an attestation that they have followed the constitutional mandate limiting verified impeachment complaints to only one within the year. They do not have a deadline, but Escudero said Congress is duty-bound to obey.
Hindi kami magkapantay pagdating sa bagay na ito. Hindi ito House at Senate kung saan co-equal ang mga ahensyang yan. Wala sa lugar para sa akin ang Kamara na hindi sumunod sa ipinag-uutos ng impeachment court.
Escudero insisted that they saved the 20th Congress time and resources by making sure the House prosecution has already answered queries before holding trial. He also defended their order to the next Congress to attest that they will be picking up from where they left off.
May basehan at karapatan ng Senado. Tanungin ang papasok na Kongreso. Gusto pa ba nyo at interesado pa ba kayo dahil yung gumawa nito ay yung nagdaang Kongreso? And again, the 19th House cannot bind the 20th House. Ang paghalal ng panel of prosecutors para sa akin ay hudyat o senyal na interesado pa rin sila na ipursige ang impeachment complaint na ito.
Escudero said whoever has questions on the Senate's procedures could always go to the Supreme Court for answers.
House prosecutors insist that the impeachment complaint against Vice President Sara Duterte is constitutional, despite the Senate sending it back to the lower chamber. Here is the report.
House prosecutors maintain that the impeachment complaint against Vice President Sara Duterte fully complies with constitutional requirements. Batangas Representative Jervy Luistro said the prosecution panel is puzzled by the Senate's decision to remand the case back to the House of Representatives and will seek further clarification.
Ang prosecution panel po ay nalalabuan dito sa naging order ng impeachment court kagabi. So we resolve to seek the clarification of the impeachment court.
On Tuesday, the Senate voted to return the impeachment complaint to the House, requesting certification that it does not violate constitutional provisions. Before the final complaint that ultimately went to a vote, 3 other impeachment complaints had already been filed against Duterte. The Constitution prohibits subjecting an official to more than one impeachment proceeding within a year.
With respect to the first order about the certification pertaining to our compliance with the Constitution in filing the impeachment complaint, we maintain our position. Sumunod po kami fully and strictly to the requirements of the Constitution. We did not violate the one-year prohibition rule.
House Prosecutor Joel Chua argued that it is the Senate's action, remanding the case that is unconstitutional.
Nakakalungkot dahil maliwanag naman po sa rules on impeachment na sila rin mismo ang gumawa na dapat sila ay aakto na impartial o neutral. Pero ngayon po parang hinaharang po nila ang demokrasya po dito sa ating bansa.
Akbayan Party List Representative-elect Chel Diokno also questioned the legality of the Senate's move. He noted that by the time the Senate decided to remand the case, the senators had already taken their oaths as impeachment court judges and were no longer acting in their capacity as lawmakers. Diokno described the move as a clear case of grave abuse of discretion.
Yun na nga yung pinagtatakahan namin na kung pwede ba mag-file ng motion ang isang judge. I think the ball should be thrown back to the Senate. And the Senate should be, we should call on the Senate to conduct the trial as the Constitution commands. Inabandonan nila yung Constitution, and that is really a clear, grave abuse of discretion.
Here at Morning Matters, we talk about the most pressing issues and give you the context behind the headlines. As his term in the Senate nears its end, Senator Tolentino remains an active voice in some of the most pressing issues, including the controversial move to return the impeachment articles to the House of Representatives. Let's discuss that with Senator Tolentino himself, who now joins us live via Zoom. Magandang umaga po sa inyo at Happy Philippine Independence Day.
Po, kayang araw.
Okay. Speaking of independence, there are those who say that the independence of the Senate has been compromised with what has been done in the past days, given that it seems the senator judges are the ones lawyering for the Vice President. What do you have to say to this?
Hindi naman po siguro totoo yun. That's a mere perception of some, but I believe that the Senate still is maintaining its stance. We have done this before several times. So, ito nangyari isang araw, isang gabi, likewise, a bunch of the Senate's here.
Okay. Senator Francis, I think you're coming in a little bit choppy on our end. Baka sa sa audio po natin. If we can fix a little bit of that, no. Pero I think I heard you quite right, no. But when we talk about the constitutionality of the articles of impeachment and the procedures and the way it was carried over by the House to the Senate, isn't that supposed to be the job of the Supreme Court to determine its constitutionality? At pangalawa po, hindi po ba dapat yung defense ang nagbi-bring up po nung matters of constitutionality and not the judges themselves?
Hindi naman po. Can you hear me loud and clear?
Yes, better.
Hindi naman po. Yung mga nagko-question, I've seen some footages asking why the judges themselves are moving for a dismissal. Hindi naman po ganon. Just to set the record straight, during that deliberation, I stood up and cited, kasi a lot of our legal luminaries are citing American jurisprudence. I even cited a recent American incident during the 2024, recent vintage lang, Gretchen, the United States Senate, just one day, April 16, 2024, April 17, 2024, the Senator himself Senator Charles Schumer moved for the dismissal of the case against Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas, the Secretary of U.S. Homeland Security, on the ground that failed to comply with some requirements. So it's not unusual for a senator judge to himself move for the dismissal. But in this case, we never moved for the dismissal. Ang nangyari lang dito, we remanded. I'm not defending now the decision, but it has been a collegial decision. So it's just a return to the lower house to comply, to certify that they are compliant with certain constitutional requirements. You ask that hindi pa dapat Supreme Court? Hindi naman. Kasi as an impeachment court, we have full powers to inquire as to the validity of the documents, as to the compliance with other requirements imposed by the Constitution, etc., etc. So we stand firm that what the Senate did is on firm basic constitutional grounds.
Pero Senator, ano po kaya yung basihan nitong pagre-remand ng articles of impeachment? Pag tinignan niyo po yung konstitusyon, parang wala po kasing nakasulat doon na maaaring ma-remand ito back to Congress.
It's not the Constitution itself that should be scrutinized. It's the rule-making power of the Congress. And part of the rule-making power of the Congress during impeachment trials is for the Senate to have their own impeachment rules. So the Senate can do whatever it thinks would be necessary to clarify everything. So ito yung ginawa. So hindi ito pinagbabawal ng sa aligang batas yung to require other documents. So again, while I am not totally in favor of what transpired, kasi yung stand ko has been this, alam mo, Gretchen, yung sa akin, once the clock ends, midnight of June 13, tapos na yung 19th Congress, and that the 20th Congress can no longer have jurisdiction. So sabi ko, dapat matapos natin ito ng 19th Congress. That's part of the number two requirement that we were asked that we voted upon. Ito yung clarify ko, direction. And I think this is now subject to a petition before the Supreme Court.
Actually, I want to go to that. No, you were part. I mean, you mentioned this calendar, 18-day or 19-day impeachment trial calendar. But you also voted to remand. You were part of the 18.
It's consistent, Gretchen, because the calendar the indicative calendar which I proposed, which has now been declared mooted because of what transpired, would always indicate that we end on June 30. And one of the items we voted upon was whether it can pass to the 20th Congress. I clarified this. Sabi ko, hindi tayo dapat tumawin, dapat tapusin natin ito ng 19th Congress. So there's no inconsistency there, Gretchen. Doon pa rin
Totoo po,
ako,
pero by remanding it, one of the demands of the Senate here is to get a resolution from the House if they still want to pursue the articles of impeachment. And that is the 20th Congress. So effectively, because you voted to remand it, tatawid po talaga bago makakuha ng resolusyon, hindi po ba?
I stood up against that. When I voted, I explained my vote. Ang sabi ko, hindi dapat ito tumawid ng 20th Congress. And yesterday, Gretchen, I delivered a short manifestation that I be allowed, and I abbreviated it to dispense with eating out a lot of important minutes of the Senate. Instead, I inserted into the records a 10-page manifestation speech that why it will not carry over. So there's no consistency there. I never voted for the second item. I never voted that it would carry over to the 20th Congress. Yung pa rin yung stand ko. Yun din yung nakalagay, Gretchen, doon sa expedited trial calendar which I proposed. Kaya nga, sinasabi nila, ba't walang trial calendar? O, nag-submit ako ng trial calendar, pero hanggang 30th June lang tayo. And then, yung pag nagbutuhan, sabi ko, mali ito kasi ganito yon, Gretchen. No, yung nag-motion si Senator De La Rosa, if you will care to look at the record, sabi ni Senator De La Rosa, I move for the dismissal
Yes,
because it should not carry over to the 20th Congress.
correct.
Binago lang yon na yung dismissal was the word dismissal was changed to remand, and later on it was changed to return. Pero yung essence ng motion ni Senator De La Rosa is for a dismissal because it should not carry over to the 20th Congress. That's why I agree. Ako doon, hindi ako pumapayag na malipat sa 20th Congress. And I can argue this even to the highest tribunal, before the highest tribunal, that the 20th Congress has not, and that this case would be functionally dismissed by 20 June 2025.
Okay, Senator, binanggit nyo nga po yung isa sa mga nabanggit nyo doon sa speech po ninyo, itong Jefferson Manual, kung saan sabi nyo hindi maaring tumawid. Pero pag binasa nyo po, ang nakasulat po doon, an impeachment is not discontinued by the dissolution of Parliament but may be resumed by the new Parliament. Hindi po ba yun ang nakasulat doon?
There is a footnote in my speech because ganito yon, Gretchen. Lahat ng basis ngayon, yung mga nagsasabi na it can continue, they cite the British Parliament. The British Parliament is composed of two houses. The House of Commons and the House of Lords. The House of Commons, nagkakaisyon. The House of Lords, permanent po yun. For life po yung life peers, spiritual peers, and hereditary peers. There are 780 members of the House of Lords. Kaya continuing sila. The last hearing, the last impeachment trial conducted by the House of Lords was 1806. Ito yung inadapt ng US tradition din, ng US Constitution. Ito yung sinasite ni Jefferson. What they did in the US Senate, Judge Pickering case, Judge Lauterbach case, tuloy-tuloy, nagko-crossover sila because the US Senate is a continuing body. Ang US Senate, they have 100 senators. 67 lagi na iiwan pag may eleksyon. So they still maintain that 2/3 of 66. And they have a quorum. 33 ang nag-i-eleksyon sa kanila. Lahat ng case na yun na sinasite ng ating mga kaibigan sa bench at sa bar, abogado rin po ako, nagtuturo din po ako ng constitutional law, is on the basis of the 1935 Constitution, which was patterned after the US Constitution. Yung 1935 Constitution natin, ang eleksyon is 8-8-8. Unlike today, our staggered elections for senators ay 12-12. So 8-8-8, 8 senators for every election cycle, meaning to say 16 will be remaining. So 16 would be sufficient to have a quorum as well as 2/3 to allow that carryover. But just the same, Gretchen, I still maintain, there is no word in the Constitution such as carryover. This is not an invitation for us to include intentions as voices. We rely on what is written in the Constitution. Yun din, kaya consistent ako dyan, Gretchen.
Pero marami po akong nakausap ito sa show na ito, and they say that the legislative function of the Senate in the House of Representatives is a different function from this, their duty in the accountability of public officers as an impeachment court. So parang kung anong korte, kahit magbago yung miyembro, hindi naman daw po nagbabago yung function nung korte.
Allow me to rebut that. When you speak of courts, the courts that you're referring to, Court of Appeals, regional trial courts, these are permanent courts. We are referring to an impeachment trial court. This is not a permanent court. This is an ad hoc constitutional body. The other instances wherein they cite to be my colleague Senator Tolentino, sinasabi nila na National Continental versus National Canvassing Board case. It refers to a periodic created constitutional body. After every presidential election, we create a National Canvassing Board. Yun talaga ina-allow mag-carry over. The Senate Electoral Tribunal, it's a periodic constitutional body. But the impeachment court is not. So yung sinasabi nila, yung ito, let me go to your first argument, which I will debunk. Ang sinasabi nila, hindi ito a legislative function. I agree. But under the Constitution, the Congress is allowed to formulate their own rules. It has been sustained in several cases that the right of the Senate, the Congress to formulate their own rules would always be respected for being constitutional. And because of that, the Senate promulgated the rules. Ano yung sa rules? All business of the Senate would terminate at the end of each Congress. When you say all, ang ibig sabihin, lahat, in layman's term, in Black's dictionary, in Webster's dictionary, all would be, the meaning of all is the whole. So, ibig sabihin, hindi naman nilagay doon, all legislative matters, except impeachment, except non-legislative matters, nakalagay all. Unlike the U.S. Senate, pag sinabi nilang, because it's a continuing body, ours is a partially continuing body, they can still ratify treaties, the U.S. Senate, because it's a continuing body. But, and also because the power to ratify and concur, the power to concur with the appointments, sa kanila yon, they can still continue. I've seen that, I've witnessed that. Tayo, we raised for time. Yesterday, the commission appointments stopped because tapos na. Yung ratification of treaties, tapos na rin. Pero dun sa rules natin, all. What is the meaning of all? Lahat. Lahat. Yung rules. Unless that rules...
Senator, ultimately, this will be... Ultimately, this will be settled by the Supreme Court. But the question is, bakit hindi na lang po ituloy yung pagdinig? Dahil if the interest is to find out the truth, this will also be brought up and has been brought up at the Supreme Court. Kumbaga, nandyan na yan, nakabinbin na yan, nandyan na po yan. Pero ang tanong ng mga... ang tanong ng mga tao... sige, go ahead.
That's why I offered the expedited calendar. Nung in-offer ko yung expedited calendar, the pundits, all those who are now lawyers, are against it. Napakabilis daw. Sabi, 90 days, ang bilis. But remember the second Trump case, 5 days. Yung Capitol riot case, 5 days. The impeachment court convened, and thereafter, after 5 days, they were able to render a verdict, Gretchen.
Well, there are questions, though, as to what is happening, because as we know, impeachment is a political exercise. Do you think that the voting yesterday was a huge indicator of the mood at the Senate, 18-5, of what the outcome could be if this trial does proceed?
I cannot prognosticate. I cannot divine the thinking of the other senator judges. These intentions then, and now we're going again to the realm of intentions. Intentions are within one head. Yung sa atin kung ano yung written. Ano yung written? Yung boto nila. Kasi nasa transcript yun. So hindi ko alam kung ano yung nasa isip nila.
Okay, Senator Risa Ontiveros has said that the move to remand back to the House has been the playbook all along of the Duterte bloc. What do you think about that?
Hindi ko alam kung ano yung sinasabi. Yung sa akin, I just explicated the constitutional reasons why it should not carry over, because the words carry over cannot be found in our 22,000 worded constitution. Inisa-isa ko na yan, wala talagang carry over. Sa akin, what is written is the law, not the intentions.
Okay, Senator, there are those also who say that maybe you are returning to the fold of the Duterte bloc, that you are, given the results of the last elections, na kayo po ay pumupunta na doon dahil nga marami na raw po natatakot pagdating sa susunod na halalan dito sa lakas ng mga Duterte, lalong-lalo na nung kanilang following.
Matagal pa yun, Gretchen. I still maintain the constitutionality at the basis of what I've spoken. As a constitutional law professor, as a student of U.S. constitutional law, even if you describe me as a constitutional law junkie, I think what I've said is correct, Gretchen. I've studied the U.S. Constitution for several years, and even took a bar exam on U.S. Constitution. So wala talagang basis yung paglipat sa 20th Congress. So it has nothing to do with politics. It has something to do with the integrity of our Constitution and my continuing defense of the Senate as a strong bastion of our democracy.
Senator, bilang panghuli, dahil kayo po ay e-exit na no, dito sa Senado, ano po masasabi po ninyo yung pinaka key reforms na inyong nagawa ng inyong opisina, and what unfinished business would you still like to see continue?
I just opened the newspaper today. I saw a flag raising ceremony yesterday in Mavulis Island in Batanes. It's the last frontier of the Philippines before one crossed the Taiwan Strait. Kinikilabutan po ako, lalong-lalo na sa mga hindi nakakaalam, na si Senator Tolentino po ang nagpatayo ng Mavulis Naval Detachment to serve as not just as an inspiration for our soldiers, but to serve as a flagpole for our independence. Kinikilabutan ako doon. So I look forward for the 20th Senate to continue what I've started, strengthening our maritime defense posture, not just within the West Philippine Sea, but including the Talampas ng Pilipinas, which I have christened as that name. Our independence as a nation, not to be bullied. Our independence as a freedom-loving archipelagic nation that should stand amongst other countries proud as the first independent country, first republic in Asia. And I look forward likewise to the independence of our laborers. I'm sorry we were not able to ratify the increased wage hike for them. I look forward to further independence of our LGUs. I look forward to the independence likewise of our health workers. Independence being a very broad term, Gretchen. So marami sana tayong gagawin pa, pero just the same, respect the decision of the electorate. But Senator Tolentino will be continuing as a law professor, as an advocate of our maritime laws in the West Philippine Sea, and a lot of other things. So I'd like to thank you, Gretchen, for this last interview with you. Perhaps this is my independence likewise from my daily routine, likewise freedom, so to speak. So today, as we wave the Philippine flag, I join the rest of the country in observing Independence Day. Mabuhay ka, Gretchen. Morning Matters, mabuhay din po.
Well said. Maraming salamat po sa inyong pagpapaliwanag tungkol dito sa nangyari sa Senado at pati na rin sa mga nangyari nung mga nakaraang taon. We have Senator Francis Tolentino joining us on Morning Matters, of course, as the Senate adjourns sine die tomorrow. That's June 13. All right, happy Independence Day. Well, don't go away. We'll be back with more stories right after a quick break. Welcome back. You're still watching Morning Matters here on One News. Now, to give us more insight on the impeachment trial of Vice President Sara Duterte, we have somebody from the other side, from Akbayan Party List, Representative-elect Chel Diokno, coming to us on the line. Good morning. Thank you so much for speaking with us.
Good morning, Gretchen. Good morning to everyone that is watching.
Okay.
And happy Independence Day.
Happy Independence Day ho. Okay. Marami pong pag-uusapan, no, lalo na po pagdating sa legality po nito. Pero gusto ko lang po makuha yung comment po ninyo unang-una dun sa sinabi ni Senate President Chis Escudero na hindi equal ang Senate and House of Representatives in this case because they have already convened as an impeachment court. Ano nga po ba, no, ang tama dito? Dahil kung iisipin nyo, sila na nga po yung senator judges at ibinalik nila para sa pagpapaliwanag. Paano po? How does that work?
Well, iwalayan natin yung function nila bilang legislative branch at yung pagiging impeachment court at prosecution panel. Siyempre, as legislative department, co-equal sila. That's very clear. Ngayon, pag impeachment court naman ang pinag-uusapan, hindi naman this does not represent the Senate as a legislative body. At pagdating naman sa prosecution panel, ito ay hiwalay din sa pagiging legislative department ng House of Representatives. Siyempre kung ang bote sila, kung yun ang kanilang tungkulin ngayon, ay they can direct the parties, both parties, no, the defense and the prosecution, insofar as the court proceedings are concerned. So magandang contextualize natin ang gano'n.
So in your view, tama po ang sinabi, ang pahayag ni Senate President Chis Escudero na hindi sila equal at legal naman po itong ginawa nilang pagre-remand?
Equal ang impeachment court at ang prosecution panel. Siyempre, ang prosecution panel, ano nila sa court, your honor yan. No? So, in that sense, may maaaring utos ng impeachment court. Pareho panig na may gagawin. Pero kasi pag we generalize it and say Senate and House are not equal, parang that doesn't accurately state the situation.
And will result to warring houses. But Senator Francis Tolentino has said, because I asked a while ago about the word remand, kung yun po ay nasa konstitusyon. And he says the Senate is free to craft its own rules when it comes to the impeachment. And this, what they're asking now for the House to do is within those rules. Do you agree?
I think it's very clear that any law and rules created or issued by any government body must be under the Constitution and cannot override the Constitution. At para naman sa akin, klaro-klaro naman na ang
Congressman?
Constitution specifically says that the verified complaint containing at least one-third of the members of the House signatures reach the Senate, they must conduct the trial forthwith. And when we say trial in law, that means receive the evidence, put the witnesses on the stand, allow the cross-examination and the presentation of the other evidence.
Correct. Although Senate President Chis Escudero said wala naman pong dismissal o termination nitong trial at sa katunayan, nagpatuloy po sila doon sa summons sa Vice President. So, is this following the way it's supposed to go? Because you also mentioned that what the Senate has done is an abandonment of the Constitution.
Yes, when that statement refers to the fact that the Senate until now, despite the fact that the article of the complaint was transmitted way back in December, has not even begun the trial. Marami sanang pwedeng gawin nila noon pa para maging maayos din yung pag-iis ng kaso. They could have already approved the rules as early as January, required the parties. They could have even conducted a pre-trial issues now could have been avoided had the Senate followed the command of the Constitution as, as expressly provided in the rules of impeachment in the Constitution.
There are two conditions that the Senate wants to be met. One is for an explanation on the constitutionality of the procedures done to transmit the fourth impeachment complaint. At yung pangalawa po ay magkaroon ng resolusyon sa House kung sila ay amenable pa rin to pursue the articles of impeachment, which will happen in the 20th Congress. If you take a look at both, alin po doon, masasagot po kaya yung dalawang yun? I mean, what do you expect? Kasi parang yung isa is already at the Supreme Court at yung pangalawa parang sa July pa.
Yun na eh. How can the House comply with the second requirement when they are the 19th Congress pa rin po tayo ngayon? Kaya hindi pa naman papasok ang 20th until after the incoming representative of yung office. So I understand that the House what the House passed yesterday was they have certified that there was no acting unconstitutional in the process, but they said we cannot answer the second requirement kasi hindi naman namin we cannot speak for the 20th Congress.
And with that, the House has deferred the acceptance of the articles of impeachment. They are planning to file a motion for clarification. In your view, what do you think should happen next?
The ball is back in the court of the Senate, and we will have to wait and see what the Senate is going to do, given the situation now. The situation is so fluid from day to day. Magbabago-bago siya. And ngayon ay hinihintay ng bayan kung anong gagawin ng Senado.
And could it lead to a functional dismissal, given the state of things? Is it legal even to bind the 20th Congress that does not yet exist?
I don't think that the House can do that, and the House has said so. So we will have to see how the Senate is going to respond to this.
Okay. Do you believe this situation could set a dangerous precedent for future impeachment trials? I mean, kung titignan po natin, parang marami po ditong thriving in the gray areas and also unprecedented. What is your take over what's happening at the Senate?
Well, ako ay nalulungkot at nababahala na maabot tayo sa ganito. Kasi kung noon pa ay sinunod ng Senado yung utos ng ating saligang batas, ay we would never have reached this place. The trial could have already been finished by now, actually. And then there would be, the country could move on and we could deal with the other issues that we are facing and must address in terms of what the needs of the people are concerned.
And with everything that is happening, what could the recourse of the people be in this instance? Ano po ang pwedeng gawin ng taong bayan? Maghihintay na lang po ba? Parang people are helpless as it seems with the situation, with the impasse.
Una, dapat I think we should all bear in mind that the authority of all our officials come from us, from the people. And it is, we have the biggest voice, we should have the biggest voice so far as how government actions occur. Now, especially when it comes to impeachment, because we are talking about public offices, we're talking about public accountability. Kaya sana lahat po tayo ay ipaalam natin, ipaabot natin sa ating pamahalaan na gawin naman ninyo yung utos ng konstitusyon dahil yung utos ng konstitusyon ay utos ng buong bayan.
Okay. A while ago, I also asked Senator Tolentino about their independence as senator jurors here. At sinabi niya, nag-cite po siya ng instance dito sa US, April 16, 17, 2024, where a senator moved for dismissal yung impeachment against a certain secretary on the grounds of failure to comply. Sabi ko po kasi sa kanya, hindi po ba trabaho ng defense na mag-bring up ng matters of constitutionality? At hindi po yung mga judges mismo. Sabi niya, hindi naman daw strange. Nangyayari naman daw po sa impeachment niyan kung saan yung senators mismo ang nagmo-move for dismissal. Your thoughts on that?
Unang-una, hindi po binding ang mga ruling ng Korte ng United States dito sa atin. Pati na rin yung mga action nila bilang impeachment court. Kailangan tingnan din natin yung specific circumstances ng kaso na yan. As far as I can recall, the circumstances are different from the circumstances we face here. And, bottom line, nanumpa ang lahat ng senator judge na sila ay maging impartial, neutral at objective sa paglilitis ng kaso. Kung pwede sanang mag-file ng motion na gano'n, dapat na inilagay na nila sa ating sa rules na inaprubahan nila. Pero wala akong nakitang nakalagay doon na pwedeng i-remand case or even i-dismiss ang case ng Senado. So these raise very serious questions. Beyond that, I really can't say about what the prosecution will do. I'm not yet a member of the panel, and I wouldn't want to reveal any strategies that may take place.
And speaking of strategies, tama rin po ba, kayo rin po ba naririnig nyo na yung pag-remand back to the House was really the playbook of the Duterte bloc? Senator Risa has mentioned that, na mukhang yun talaga, from the very start, yung kanilang binabalak.
Mahirap para sa akin na alamin kung ano yung nasa utak po nila. At the point is, I think that is what happened. And apparently, there were really some intentions to go in that direction. Yung nakakalungkot at nakakabahala ay lahat itong mga nangyayari, you call it the playbook, ay hindi sumasang-ayon sa ating konstitusyon. And sabihin natin, sige, tanggapin natin political process ang impeachment. Pero political man yan o legal, lahat naman ay dapat susunod sa utos ng konstitusyon.
Meron po kasi tayong mga video na nakikita na parang may coaching pa na nangyayari. Mula kay Senator Joel Villanueva, parang ini-instruct niya si Senator Amy Marcos. In fact, that has gone viral, which makes us question everything that happened during the proceedings. But tama po kayo, no? It is a day-to-day thing, and we shall see what the Senate does with the ball in their court. In the meantime, maraming salamat po for joining us this morning and for your insights on what's been happening. We have Akbayan Party List Representative-elect Attorney Chel Diokno.
Thank you, my pleasure.
Stay tuned. Morning Matters will be back right after a short break. Welcome back. You're still watching Morning Matters here on One News. The Education Department is stepping up its anti-bullying efforts following reports labeling the Philippines as the bullying capital of the world. The agency said new guidelines have been issued to schools as part of the agency's intensified campaign for school year 2025 to 2026. They're also now addressing the shortage of guidance counselors by training teachers as temporary guidance designates. A 2018 international assessment found that 65% of Filipino grade 10 students experience bullying, the highest among surveyed countries. Let's discuss that further with Yusek Filamon Ray Javier of DepEd Legal and Legislative Affairs. Welcome to Morning Matters.
Thank you, Gretchen. Happy Independence Day.
Happy Independence Day. Okay, Yusek, this is quite somber news to discuss on this special day, but discuss it we must. Being called as the bullying capital of the world is a heavy label to have. Do you think this depicts the real situation on ground and in our schools?
Yeah, that's correct, Gretchen. This is a sad label for us to have, but we have to accept the reality that there are really bullyings in our school, because acceptance would be an important factor for us to start discovering the solutions to this problem. So we are aware that there are bullyings, and the Department of Education, through the leadership of our Secretary Sani Angara, are ramping up the efforts and measures to prevent and to reduce the bullying incidents in our schools.
Okay, of course, we're seeing numbers here from the survey. 65% of Filipino grade 10 students has experienced bullying, the highest among surveyed countries. Pero from your point of view, what do you see? Gaano kalala yung sitwasyon ng bullying?
Yes, so we are monitoring two numbers, Gretchen. The first number would be the reported incidents of bullying in our schools. In 2019 to 2020, the bullying incident is about 80,000 incidents. It dropped during the pandemic, probably because the schools are not on a face-to-face mode. But when the students returned to schools in 2022 to 2023, the numbers would be 70,000 incidents. So we are looking at the numbers, Gretchen. It's a bit lower than the previous one, but we are still ramping up our efforts to prevent bullying incidents.
Okay, and this comes amid hybrid setup of education. Marami na rin pong study from home setup, ano? Pero parang yung binaba po niya ay 10,000 lamang. It makes me also wonder what the definition of bullying is. Pag sinabi po nating bullying, paano po natin tinatanong ito? Yung tanong na, do we ask directly, do you feel bullied? Or is it specific instances that relate to bullying? I mean, do the children recognize that when they say they are being bullied, they are actually part of this list that we're having?
Yes, they recognize from the minor mocking up to the more serious ones of physical infliction of harm. Our learners recognize that they are being bullied and they are reporting these incidents. So you will realize, Gretchen, the numbers that I provided are reported incidents. We don't survey the learners on a regular basis insofar as one is concerned. But the numbers that I've mentioned are reported incidents through our channels of reporting with respect to bullying.
Okay, so yan yung mga official na parang idinulog na sa mga kinauukulan. Pero meron din kasing survey na inilabas yung PISA. Parang nag-cite sila ng name calling. Meron silang nilagay na yung gossip. Meron din yung parang kinuha yung gamit nila. Pero yung bullying mismo, parang hindi ata na itanong. So at this point, can you help us define what is the borderline when you say already that you are being bullied? Because on the other hand, pwede rin nga naman na nagkakaasaran lang kayo, nagkakainisan o nagkakakulitan.
The bullying itself is a technical term. No? Under the law, it refers to severe or repeated use of one or more students of written or verbal electronic expression, the physical gesture, that may have an effect on the emotional or the physical state of the student. No? Admittedly, Gretchen, yung term ng bullying, kung nabully ba siya or hindi, is from the perspective of the recipient, of the victim. Siya yung makapagsabi kung nagkakaasaran lang sila o siya yung makapagsabi na parang nabubully na ako. No, that's what sila yung nagre-report kung may bullying incident na nangyari sa kanya o doon sa school.
Okay, you have designated teachers, teachers as temporary guidance designates. What does that mean? And what is their role?
Yung ating current na polisiya sa ating anti-bullying efforts ay hindi lang parusahan yung mga nambubully, mga Gretchen. Isang direktiba sa amin ay ensure na meron ding mga positive na aksyon para mabawasan yung bullying incident sa school. At yung mga guidance designate na mga teachers ay makakatulong sa efforts na ito dahil sila yung mag-guide sa mga learners natin sa mga eskwelahan. Aside from the fact na meron tayong mga child protection committee sa bawat eskwelahan dito sa Pilipinas.
Okay, but what do you think is causing this high incidence of bullying in schools? I mean, is it cultural? Is it, the lack of presence of authority? Is it shortage of teachers? Hindi napapansin? I mean, kung kumpara natin yung Pilipinas sa ibang bansa, bakit mataas dito sa Pilipinas? Na-identify nyo na po ba yung root causes nun?
Alam mo yung bullying incident is a complex human interaction. Ang hirap niyang ng root cause nito. Ang maaaring cultural, maaaring nagsisimula sa bahay, maaari din naman sa interaction sa mga estudyante. The fact is, meron bullying at ito ay inaaral na po ng Department of Education sa tulong ng mga eksperto, pati na po yung mga efforts na aming ginagawa para mabawasan yung bullying incidents.
And how is the DepEd boosting security in schools as you conduct these studies on how to adapt to the modern times? Of course, cyberbullying is also a part of that. At sinabi nga ng EDCOM 2 na outdated na yung definition ng bullying dun sa Anti-Bullying Act of 2013 kasi nga wala pang cyberbullying noon. So how is the DepEd boosting security for children?
Okay. Number one, Gretchen, yung DepEd sa pag-uutos ni Secretary Sani Angara, ina-update na lahat ng polisiya na may kinalaman sa bullying. Itong June, meron ng updated na policy on child protection, meron ng updated anti-bullying policy, at meron na ding updated na Safe Spaces Act policy. Itong tatlong polisiya nito ay nakatutok sa anti-bullying campaign ng department. Pangalawa, si Secretary Angara ay nagpatawag ng isang malaking EXCOM meeting kasama yung mga ibang agencies sa ating gobyerno, understanding that the efforts to reduce bullying incidents in the school is not just for Department of Education, but it is a community effort. So nagpatawag po ng meeting, nag-imbita po si Secretary Sani Angara sa DOH, DILG, DSWD, Commission on Human Rights, UNICEF at Law Enforcement Agency para po mabawasan yung incident of bullying at para din po mataas ang seguridad ng ating mga learners sa mga eskwela.
Meron po ba kayong parang target dito sa mga numero na mapababa siya to a certain level?
Yung reported incident, syempre gusto natin bumaba. But you would understand, Gretchen, the number on reported incidents may not be accurate in terms of depicting whether anti-bullying efforts are successful because there are that number of factors. One of the factors would be it's entirely possible that now it's easier for learners to report incidents of bullying, which is good, right? But the numbers will be increased and it would appear that there are increase in bullying incidents. But in reality, dumali lang naman kasi yung pagre-report ng bullying incidents sa school. Kasi tulad ngayon, nag-launch ang Department of Education ng Learners Telesafe hotline kung saan madali na para sa mga learners ang mag-report ng bullying incidents. So kung in terms of numbers sa reporting ng bullying, syempre gusto namin ipababa ito pero wala siyang target. But ang ginagawa namin, Gretchen, ang mayroon kaming binomonitor ay yung pag-roll out ng Child Protection Committee sa bawat eskwelahan. No? So meron tayong 45,000 na eskwelahan sa bansa at tinitingnan namin kung bawat isang eskwelahan ay meron ng functional na Child Protection Committee. 100% ang aming target dyan. Currently, meron na tayong mga 62% no, na may fully at partially functional Child Protection Committee. Ang mga 28% ay nagsisimula ng mag-organisa. Yung 12% na lang yung amin titingnan para dapat ay magsimula na sila sa pag-organisa. No? Ang direktiba sa amin, dapat bago matapos ang taon, meron ng 100%. No? Lahat ng eskwelahan may Child Protection Committee para tutukan ang bullying incident sa kanilang mga lugar.
Of course, assigning the teachers also to be guidance designates is good upskilling for them to know what to do in those situations para masolusyonan po in the immediate term. But it seems the bigger problem is the lack of guidance counselors, with only about 2,000 serving about 28 million students. That was from the EDCOM2 report, of course. At sana patuloy po natin aralin po ito para masolusyonan because it is no joke to be called the bullying capital of the world. Maraming salamat po, Yusek Philemon Ray Javier. We have him from the Department of Education joining us today.
Thank you, Gretchen.
And that wraps up today's episode of Morning Matters. We hope we've given you the right start to your morning and your holiday. A happy Independence Day once again. Let's enjoy our independence on this day and let's go ahead and make the day matter. My name is Gretchen Ho. We are One News, all sides, all the time.